Two things. First one, a question. What do you think is the absolute flaw from the Mega Charizard EX from Phantasmal Flames? That's what this video is all about, so I'll delve into that in a second. Second thing, I just wanted to give a big shout out and a big thank you to everyone that tunes into the channel. Your support means a lot. This channel doesn't happen unless people watch it, so I really appreciate those that are new to the channel, and moreover than that, I really appreciate those of you that join in and watch all the time. It's really, really appreciated, and of course doesn't go unnoticed. So, channel topic, what is the flaw for this Mega Charizard EX SIR from Phantasmal Flames? This is a really, really good conversation point, and there's some really, really good information and data we can pull from this. I'm going to give my opinion right now, and I'm going to start it off with a statement. Name one other card in modern Pokemon history with a pull rate of 1 in 400 packs that is worth $600 raw. I think the answer is you won't find one. Can the artwork from this card hold it at that price point? My answer is no, it cannot. And that takes nothing away from how good the artwork on this card is. I've said this on every video and every topic of conversation I've talked about when it comes to Mega Charizard EX or Phantasmal Flames. The first thing that comes to mind is just how phenomenal the artwork is on this card. It is a beautiful looking card. It is one of the best Charizards we've ever had. So with that out of the way, where will it go? Here's my opinion. I think, and maybe this is a touch conservative, and maybe you might say it's on the fence, I think it's going to get down to $300 raw, maybe even a little bit less than that. And here's where my information and data is coming from. So not only are we going to look at what its raw price will be, but also its Gem Mint 10 price in a PSA 10. And I'm going to back this up with a little bit of evidence, but I also just want to reiterate that question. Name one other modern grail or modern chase card that has a pull rate of 1 in 400 packs that is worth $600 raw. The only closest thing at the moment is maybe Bubble Mew from Pattern Fates, but the pull rates on that is still a little bit tougher. Anyway, here we go. So we actually have a little bit of data from PSA, and I'll bring it up on the board. This is very recent. There's been 464 graded copies through PSA of this new Mega Charizard EX. Now, of those 464 copies, and I know it's quite a small data sample, 319 of them have returned a 10. I've done the maths on this. This works out to be a 68.7% conversion rate to a PSA 10. So roughly or near enough to 70% conversion rate to a PSA 10. Now the big question is, what is this card worth right now in a PSA 10 and raw? Here's some completed listings off eBay very recently. These are US prices, US sales. We can see here up on the screen that as of 30th November, a PSA 10 copy sold for $2,550 US. Now that to me seems damn expensive. I just don't get why people spend so much money on these cards in PSA 10s at the start. Like, it makes no sense. Like, are you going to wave it around and be like, oh, one of the first in the world to have a PSA 10? I mean, that's great and that's fantastic, and maybe that floats your boat, but why not just wait 6 months? Why not just wait 12 months? There's going to be so many more copies of this card graded in a PSA 10. It's going to be worth less, and I'll get to my opinion on where I think that'll be soon, but why do people do that? I don't know. It baffles me. It always does. Also, a completed listing on the 30th of November is a raw copy that went for $645 US. And in fact, since then, there's probably been a couple more examples on TCG Player and other platforms that have been selling even in the high 500s, but roughly around that $600 US mark. So I think we can safely say that this card raw is roughly $600 US. And in a PSA 10, seems to be about $2,500. Now, if you do the maths there's this conversion rate. Conversion rate between raw price and PSA 10 price. And this conversion rate, if you look over the history of Pokemon, it's always very predictable. It's predictable in the sense that the tougher the card is to gem mint a PSA 10, the bigger the conversion rate. So in this instance, it's very close to being 4 times the price of its raw price. the PSA 10 price that is. So it's 3.9x, going from raw at 600 to a PSA 10 2,550. Now what I mean by that is a lot of modern cards, particularly Sword and Shield era cards, and it seems Mega Evolution, even some of the tail end of Scarlet and Violet, we had quite good print quality in English, and as a result we don't see a big multiplier effect from a Gem Mint raw copy to a Gem Mint 10. Now on some of the harder to grade cards from Scarlet and Violet era, like I'm talking, for example, the Magikarp from Paldea Evolved, that has quite a big multiplier effect between raw price and Gem Mint 10. And if we go back in time to some of those super hard to grade cards, I'm talking, eras like EX era, for argument's sake, when a lot of the gold stars in a PSA 10, because of how hard they were to grade, and even some of the XY era cards, like I'm talking, Ancient Origins PSA 10s, I'm talking EX Phantom Forces like the Gengar and stuff that are, very low PSA 10 populations, and they're difficult cards to grade a 10 because print quality was so poor. And as a result, the multiplier effect, a card that might be worth $200 raw could be worth $8,000 in a PSA 10. Or in the case of sets like some of the EX Team Rocket returns, like the Torchic, that might be worth $4,000 or $5,000 raw, but $100,000 in a PSA 10. You get my point. The tougher it is to grade or Gem Mint to 10, clearly the bigger gap there's going to be between raw price and PSA 10 price. Now here's the kicker. What's the best thing or closest thing that we can compare this to? I'll jump into that in just a second, but I just wanted to give a shout out to today's video sponsor, which is of course the Collector app. If you don't have it, there'll be a link in the description to download it. You can follow my journey down the content creators section. There's so many cool new features to this app. Some of the big ones, under your portfolio tab, you can filter through a couple of different options now. So rather than just seeing the most expensive item you have down to least expensive, you can see market movers. So you can see what's trended up for you in the day or what's trended down, but hopefully what's trending up. Moreover than that, if you click on your account tab, you used to only be able to see how much you've spent and what your total portfolio is worth. So your paper value. Now when you sell something, you can actually show your realized gains from sales. Moreover than that, this app also has some awesome features for an investor and collector as a pro user. So as a pro user, you unlock heaps. You get so much data, which as an investor is so important to making good decisions when it comes to investing. So Collector app, again, link in the description to download that one. Now here's the best modern example I think we can compare this Charizard to. When it comes to artwork and overall hype and overall chase, I think the Umbreon VMAX from Evolving Skies. Now keep in mind, pull rates are very different. It is 4 times harder to pull this Umbreon than what it is to pull the Charizard. We're talking 1 in 400 versus 1 in 1600. That is a massive difference. However, what's interesting is gem rate is very similar. So if we put some PSA data up on the screen here, you'll see the gem rate for Umbreon. There's been 26,943 copies of this card sent in for grading, and 19,202 of them have returned as a 10. There is nearly 20,000 PSA 10 copies of this Umbreon. Insanity. It's just crazy. And people say, modern will never go up, there's too many of them. And look, there's nearly 300,000 graded copies of Evolving Skies cards. But look at the booster box. The booster box price just keeps pushing up and holding strong. Anyway, this is a 71% conversion rate to a PSA 10. That, as you might be aware, if you remember back to my PSA conversion rate on the Charizard from Phantasmal Flames, nearly 69%. So they are very similar, 69 to 71% gem rate from raw to PSA 10. Now, if we look at some completed listings for Umbreon VMAX very recently, we'll see on the 30th of November, a PSA 10 copy sold for just under $3,000 raw, 2,991 to be exact, as a PSA 10. And then raw, plenty of examples, but it's hard to find like a Gem Mint copy. So I think, roughly it's probably going to be sitting somewhere around $1,600, $1,500 raw as a nice example of an Umbreon VMAX. So as you can see, there's just under a 2 times conversion rate from raw to PSA 10. Why? Because there's so many damn copies of the PSA 10, and it's a 71% conversion rate. That's what I was just talking to you about before. So with all that in mind, let's just jump back to Phantasmal Flames Charizard and go, well, hold on. If Umbreon's got a 71% conversion rate, and this Zard, although not much data, has a 69% conversion rate, they're very similar. So why is the Charizard worth 4 times more as a PSA 10 compared to the Umbreon being under 2 times more? It's because there's still a low PSA 10 population. There's only 319 10s. You know what? Soon enough, this is going to become 3,000, and probably some stage, it might even push with the pull rates and depending on how much gets printed, to 30,000 PSA 10 copies. Look at the Charizard from 151, how many PSA 10 copies there are out there of that card. There's an astronomical amount. So don't be alarmed if this goes from 300 to 3,000 very quickly, to maybe even in the next 2 years, if there's big print runs of Phantasmal Flames, this pushing 15, 20, 25,000, maybe even 30,000 PSA 10 copies. You know what's going to happen to its PSA 10 price when that comes into play? It's going to go down. And it's going to sit somewhere in the vicinity, in my opinion, of 2 times, that's if gem rate stays in the high 60s, 2 times what its raw price is. So I guess I need to be true to my word. If my prediction is this is going to be a $300 card as a gem mint raw example, I think if we 2x that, if PSA 10 populations in the near future, I'm talking 9, 12, 18 months down the track, if PSA 10 populations are somewhere around 15 to 20,000 PSA 10 copies, I think we could be talking $500, $600 for this card in a PSA 10. Now, to give you an idea, just to hammer home this point, Surging Sparks Pikachu, although not as good looking card, I'm not comparing them saying this is as good looking card as the Charizard, but they're both fan favorite Pokemon. We've got like the mascot of the TCG and everyone's favorite of the TCG, or everyone's favorite of the anime, or the trading card game, or the Game Boy games. We've got Pikachu and Charizard, 2 of the best. Surging Sparks Pikachu pull rates are about 1 in 1,000, so it's 2.5 times harder to pull than this Charizard. And it's under $300 raw. Again, I'm not saying the artwork's anywhere near as good, because it's not. I think the Charizard has the better artwork, but that is under $300 raw. So I think the prediction stands true there. That's where I see this Charizard going. $300 raw, $500 to $600 PSA 10. What are your predictions? Again, question, let me know down below. Thanks heaps again, everyone, for tuning in. I'm Michael, this is PokeOz, and I'll catch everyone next time.